Welcome to this retrospective slash review for BioShock 2 Remastered. And I'm going to go ahead and do what I've done in some of my last videos and just kind of play in the background while I talk about the game and just give you my thoughts. So let me go ahead and start by talking about the big elephant in the room. Because this is a sequel, I think the majority of people, when they play this game, they immediately jump to comparing it to the story in BioShock 1. And, whether or not you think that is unfair or whatnot, you want this game to stand on its own, the fact of the matter remains is it is very closely tied to the first one because you're still in Rapture. It's, I think it's like 8 or 10 years later. I forget the exact time and whatnot, but it's still very heavily tied to the first game. And so it's going to have to get compared to that game for better or worse. And I think when you break it down, when you compare the two games, unfortunately, it's for the worst story wise. Because the first game, you as a character, you had this illusion that you had free will and everything was because of, those were your choices, even though at the end of the day, you found out there's a lot of subliminal programming that you were being subjected to. And but the fact of the matter is, you get through the game, and then there's that reveal, and the reveal, and or plot twist, I should say, it just hits so much harder. In this game, you as a character, you are a blank slate in the absolute purest, method of saying that you're a blank slate because there's you're a big daddy, a very old model big daddy, apparently, from what the game says. You're an old model big daddy, and that they kind of let you know that for sure. And basically, you really have no personality, and you never develop any personality. And that's just something, as a character, a main character, I should say, the Big Daddy in this game is a far weaker main protagonist than Jack from BioShock 1. And, that's, it is what it is. Now, is that truly a bad thing? I don't know. I mean, it really depends. But like I said, that whole plot twist, and reveal, it just really isn't here in this game, because the first game had that plot twist and that reveal, and it just was much more impactful than this game is. Somebody shoot me. How dare they? Anyway, so like I said, much more impactful than this one. And the only reveal they actually give you here as for your character is how you came back to life after 10 years. And whereas that's a decent reveal, it's not really not very big of a haha, check it out, look at this plot twist. So there's not a huge plot twist that makes you invested in this character the way you were invested in Jack as a character in the first game. Let's see here. Yeah, so definitely you're just a blank slate of a character, and your motivations are they're very I guess you'd say pure in a certain way, because you're just a mindless big daddy, and that's really all there is to it. You're a mindless big daddy, even though you're probably one of the weakest big daddies of all time. But that's what you are. You're just a kind of a mindless big daddy, just like all the other ones. And the thing is, it's a bit of a missed opportunity for them, because think about it. Look, I'm here playing a big daddy, and yet I'm using plasmids. There's no other big daddies in the game that does that. I mean, there's actually very few characters outside of, say, Houdini splicers that actually do seem to use plasmids or anything like that. So there's a very missed opportunity for them to give this character some sort of backstory or motivation or something. They just really dropped the ball on that, in my personal opinion. And I'll let me go ahead and I'll just go ahead and jump to the DLC Minerva's Den real quick, because in Minerva's Den, that was one of the things about um, the main character there. Now, I think I pretty much saw the twist coming from a mile away, but it was a twist that gave the character motivation, gave them a reason for doing what they were doing, and it made a lot of sense. And so the subject Sigma in Minerva's Den was much more relatable of a character than the Big Daddy in the main game. One second. So that's a point that does need to be made as far as main characters are concerned. So, of the two BioShock games, and to include the DLC Minerva's Den, Subject Delta is by far the weakest of the protagonists as far as that's concerned, and so that does impact things, greatly, story wise. And so I don't want to focus exclusively on the story, because I mean that is a major aspect of these BioShock games for certain, but it's not the only aspect. In fact, this is literally perfect timing. One of the things I'd like to point out is, from a visual style, I think the undersea portions of this game visually were really awesome. So there's a lot of visual upgrades as far as that's concerned, but there's also a bit of a visual downgrade as well, because in the main BioShock 1, you got to see a lot more of the Art Deco style. And I just think the architecture and whatnot was a little bit better in the first BioShock as far as the levels were concerned. Uh, this game, for the most part, it felt like you were mostly in shanty towns and 1950s downtown America kind of um, you know locations. That's what it felt like, and that's probably mostly what they were going for. But from a visual perspective, it just wasn't as good. So it's kind of a mixed bag as far as that's concerned. Not all bad, don't get me wrong, but it is a bit of a mixed bag. But this brings me up to a new point here, actually, is I do believe that this game has other really good features that I like to talk about. And one would just be the plasmids. So the ability to upgrade plasmids was actually a very nice touch in this game as compared to the first game, because you didn't have any. Nope, you didn't have any upgrades in the first game that you do here in this one. So that's really a nice touch. I'm gonna burn you, buddy. And so there's definitely a nice touch as far as that's concerned. And another huge improvement in this game are the gene tonics. The gene tonics, instead of being broken down into three different categories like they were in the first game, in this one, it's basically you have, I think it's like 30 that you can do, and you can basically mix and match whatever you want. And that's actually really neat, I think. Um, oh, you know what? I could have just done it right there. Oh well. so so I think that was I could have counted, I should say. Anyway, that's a really nifty feature and a very big improvement, I'd say. Weapons, well, the weapons are kind of a mixed bag, sadly. There's just certain weapons here that were a bit of kind of a letdown, or things that I just wasn't very interested in. Um, for instance, I couldn't stand the spear gun. Like, not at all. I absolutely hated the spear gun. Um, I mean, the rocket spears were okay, but that's about it. Um, it just wasn't a very good weapon, in my opinion. Now, you may may like that, and I may just be in the minority there, but I just wasn't a big fan of it. Um, the rivet gun, it seems pretty decent, but at the same time, you're like the big daddies from the first game. They they hit a lot harder than you do. In fact, you're very weak as a big daddy. You're kind of like the worst big daddy ever, and that's just I still believe that. I mean, now it looks like I'm sitting here destroying everything, and that's because I am, because I'm playing on easy. Which, if you're going to play this game, definitely don't put it on easy, because it's just kind of insulting how easy it is when you put it on this difficulty level. Um, in fact, I would say that I think the majority of people would probably be better off just playing it on hard, because otherwise, if you're playing it on a higher or a low difficulty because you want to experience the story, it's kind of a letdown in that regards. So yeah, definitely easy difficulty is probably only for basically games journalists, and anybody who actually wants to be challenged and play the game. You're not going to want to play it on easy, and that's just the way it is. Now, there's another aspect of this game that I really do want to hammer home real quick, though, and that is the stability of the game. This game is far more stable than BioShock 1 ever was. My entire playthrough of this game, I had, I think, one crash on the main game. I think it crashed once on me when I was playing Minerva's Den, and I think one other time as well. But that's it. And they weren't even really bad crashes either. For instance, in Bioshock 1, I would get crashes where it would lock up my entire computer, and I'd have to restart my entire computer because the map screen would lock everything up. And I didn't have anything like that happen in this at all. And then even worse in well, no, I don't know if it's worse. It was equally as bad. But in Bioshock 1, it would if it crashed on a save, it would delete that save, and that was and you would lose a lot of time if that happened. So that was very disconcerting, but that's something that I did not experience at all when playing Bioshock 2. So definitely from a stability perspective, this game is far more stable than Bioshock 1 was, and it's not even close. I mean, it is a much more stable game, and just it is a much better experience for that as well, which is kind of funny because both of these games being remastered, I thought they were basically using the same engine, and there was one thing I did. I changed my INI file a little bit off of a community post, and I think there might have been you could have used that for Bioshock 1 as well, possibly, but I could be mistaken. Um, but I don't think even changing the INI on Bioshock 1 would have made that huge of an impact. So I think that this game, from that perspective, was a massive improvement over the first Bioshock. Um, and the DLC. Let's go ahead and talk about the DLC. Minerva's Den. It's a good DLC. I mean, the only problem with it, or one of the main problems with it, is the fact that it's just too short. I mean, like I said, it's good, but it is extremely short, and that's probably one of the biggest criticisms you can give to it. Well, that, and I would say, well, not a criticism, but a thing to praise is the fact that one of the things I liked a lot about Minerva's Den was the ion laser. That ion laser was awesome. That was a beautiful addition. In fact, and they didn't even get rid of any of the weapons in the game to make room for it. So that was actually really nice. Uh, and like I said, it's a very, I guess you'd say a tight experience as compared to this game. But you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, and we're talking about tight experiences, uh, another drawback you could say about the BioShock 2 and even Minerva's Den to a lesser extent is the fact that once you leave an area like I'm about to do right now, once you leave, there is no backtracking. And so if you're trying to get achievements and completionist stuff, you could miss something and there's no backtracking for you, which there were a few areas like that in the first game, but very few. I mean, I think two, maybe three at the most. So that linear level by level design, that's another step back for this game as compared to the first one. I mean, it's just one of those things you have to know exactly what is in each level as you're playing and make sure you get everything before you jump to the next level. So yeah, that's a bit of a step back, I would say, because at least with the first game, you could backtrack pretty much whenever. In fact, to get a lot of stuff, you had to backtrack in the first game. So I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag. If you're one of those players who doesn't like doing a lot of backtracking, this game's probably a little bit better for you. You just focus on one level at a time, and then press on from there. Um, and I want to go ahead and talk about the characters, especially since I now just walked into Pauper's Drop, which is what this place is called. The characters in this game, uh, most of them are very. There's not any redeemable qualities for barely any of the characters. I would say that the main antagonist here at this level, Grace Holloway, she actually has some redeeming qualities because she was basically fed lies about you and thought that you were basically a murder machine and that you stole Eleanor from her. So her motivations, whereas she hated you the whole time and she was a thorn in your side, you can understand where she was coming from. And so she is probably one of the few redeemable characters in this game besides Eleanor. Eleanor, unless you play, an evil playthrough, Eleanor is a good character as well. Sinclair, he doesn't turn on you like Fontaine did in the first game. Sinclair, you start getting these tapes and whatnot in the background. You realize that this guy was a pretty despicable character too, and then you get like Gil and Stanley. Both of those guys are not good characters in the slightest. They're actually pretty horrible guys. And Sophia Lamb, the main villain of the game, and you get to a point where you're trying to basically your actions, you can save her or you can basically end up having her die. It's like she's not a character that if she dies you feel any sorrow for her because she's also a very despicable character, and that's just the way a lot of these characters in this game are. And it's kind of a letdown, really. Tenenbaum, she's in the game and then she just disappears like completely in the first game. She just goes away. Like, where the heck did she go? She just no longer there. And fortunately, they did bring her back in Minerva's Den to a certain extent, but it is weird for them to kind of introduce her and then have her just be a nothing burger, after a short period of time. So that was kind of weird. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much everything as far as characters are concerned with this game. Minerva's Den was very good DLC, I'd say, pretty easily actually. It was definitely a worthy DLC. The challenge maps in this game, uh, I'd say the challenge maps in this game are not too bad actually. They're not as frustrating as the ones in the first BioShock War was the Protector Trials, I should say. In this one, they're called challenge maps in BioShock One. So those challenge maps in BioShock One were kind of unnecessarily frustrating, really. Um, but I was able to get through pretty much all the Protector Trials. I haven't done any of the bonus ones yet, but I was able to get through all the Protector Trials with only having to do a handful of them like twice. So yeah, they're not super bad. I mean, though they do emphasize an aspect of the game that you could probably say is probably one of the weaker aspects of the game, and that is you know the um, the atom harvesting aspect, which over a time doing a lot of atom harvest, it does get old pretty quick. But let's see, is there anything else I want to talk about? Well, I guess this. I'd say the hacking game that you see me play right now is actually pretty nice. I think it's definitely a step up in comparison to the first game. Though to be fair, I liked the first game's. I liked its hacking game, but apparently that's something that a lot of people weren't a big fan of. But so if you didn't like the hacking game in the first one, I'd say this one, the hacking game, is obviously um, probably more up your alley. I think it's pretty simple, but it's a lot quicker, so that's always good. So yeah, I guess that's really about all the thoughts I can think about this game and how I feel about it. I would definitely not rate it as high as the first Bioshock. I'd say, I don't know, the stability aspect of the game perhaps is probably one of the best aspects to it because it's just such a stable game, and I think that is a huge improvement. But the the storyline as a drawback, the storyline as a downgrade does hurt it appreciably. But other than that, I'd say I guess I'm going to be a bit generous, and I'm going to give it 4.5 stars out of 5 or 90%. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. And no, I don't feel like fighting this Big Daddy. That'll do it for this video, and I thank you for watching. See y'all in the next one. Take care.